Jake Morrison stood at the window of his office, watching the sunrise paint the sky of Kepler 442b in shades of purple and gold. The mining colony spread out below him like a metal garden, with extraction towers reaching toward the alien sky, and transport vehicles moving between the buildings like busy insects. 3 years ago, this planet had been nothing but rock and empty space. Now it was home to almost 3,000 people. "Another beautiful morning in paradise," Lisa Parker said as she walked into his office. The chief engineer carried a steaming cup of coffee and a datapad full of reports. Her red hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her blue coveralls were already stained with grease, despite the early hour. Jake smiled at her comment. Paradise was not exactly the word most people would use to describe Kepler 442b. The gravity was heavier than Earth's, the air had to be processed to be breathable, and the nearest civilization was 6 months away by the fastest ship. But for the people who lived here, it was home. "Production numbers look good," Lisa continued, handing him the datapad. "We're ahead of schedule on the rare earth extraction. The new mining equipment is working better than expected." Jake nodded as he reviewed the numbers. The colony existed for one purpose: to extract the valuable minerals that lay beneath the planet's surface. These materials were essential for building the faster-than-light drives that allowed humanity to travel between the stars. Without colonies like this one, human expansion would grind to a halt. "Any word from the supply ship?" Jake asked. "The Meridian is still 3 weeks out," Lisa replied. "But we have enough supplies to last until then. Tony did another security sweep yesterday and found nothing unusual." Tony Martinez was the colony's security chief, a former military man who took his job seriously. With only 30 security personnel to protect the entire colony, he had to be careful and smart. Fortunately, Kepler 442b was in a quiet part of the galaxy, far from any major trade routes or territorial disputes. Jake was about to respond when his communication device buzzed with an urgent message. The display showed a priority alert from the orbital monitoring station. His stomach tightened as he read the words: "Unknown ships detected at system edge, large formation. Moving toward planet." "Lisa, get Tony up here now," Jake said, his voice suddenly tense, "and put the colony on alert status." Lisa saw his expression and didn't ask questions. She activated her communicator and called Tony while Jake pulled up the sensor data from the orbital station. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12 large ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were unlike anything in the human database, sleek, crystalline vessels that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Each ship was easily 3 times the size of the largest human vessel, and they were moving toward the planet in perfect formation. Tony Martinez arrived within minutes, his dark hair slightly messy from running. The security chief was a compact man with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. He had served in the Outer Colony Wars before taking this job, and Jake was grateful to have his experience. "What are we looking at?" Tony asked, studying the sensor display. "Unknown alien ships, 12 of them, heading straight for us," Jake replied. "They'll be here in about 6 hours at their current speed." Tony's jaw tightened. "Any response to our communication attempts?" "Nothing. They're not answering our calls." The 3 of them stood in silence for a moment, watching the alien ships move closer. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Nearly 3,000 people depended on him to keep them safe, and he had no idea what these aliens wanted. "Maybe they're just passing through," Lisa said hopefully. "Or maybe they want to trade," Tony shook his head. "Ships don't travel in military formations like that unless they're looking for a fight. And they would have answered our calls if they wanted to trade." Jake made his decision. "Tony, get all security personnel to their posts. Lisa, start the emergency protocols. Get the civilians to the shelters and prepare for possible evacuation." As his staff hurried to carry out his orders, Jake activated the colony's communication system. His voice echoed through every building and workplace as he spoke to his people. "Attention all colonists. This is Administrator Morrison. We have detected unknown ships approaching our planet. This is not a drill. Please report to your assigned emergency shelters immediately. Security teams will provide updates as the situation develops. The colony transformed within minutes. People emerged from buildings and moved quickly toward the reinforced shelters that had been built into the hillsides. Children stayed close to their parents, and everyone moved with the practiced efficiency of people who had rehearsed this scenario many times. Jake watched from his office as the alien ships grew larger on the sensor display. They were beautiful in their own way, like living jewels moving through space. But there was something menacing about their approach, something that made his instincts scream danger. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called from her monitoring station. "The ships are powering up weapons systems." Jake felt his heart sink. The sensor readings were clear. The alien vessels were charging energy weapons that could level a city. There was no doubt about their intentions now. "Tony, how long can our defenses hold?" Jake asked. The security chief studied the tactical display with grim eyes. "Against that kind of firepower? Maybe an hour if we're lucky. Our shields and weapons were designed to deal with pirates and raiders, not a full military fleet." Jake closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of all the families in the shelters, all the people who had come here to build a new life, he thought. Of the children who had been born on this planet, who had never seen Earth but called this place home. "Get me a channel to the communication array," he said finally. "If we're going to die here, at least someone should know what happened." Lisa worked quickly at her console, establishing the connection. "You're connected to the main transmitter. Signal strength is good." Jake took a deep breath and began to speak into the microphone. "This is Colony Administrator Jake Morrison of Kepler Colony 7. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. I am broadcasting this message on all emergency frequencies. We are requesting immediate assistance. Our coordinates are being transmitted with this message." He paused, looking out at the colony where people were still running toward the shelters. "To anyone who receives this transmission, please know that the colonists of Kepler 442b died defending their home. We are not soldiers, but we will not surrender." Morrison out. Just as he finished speaking, the first alien ship entered the planet's atmosphere. It was even more beautiful up close, like a living crystal that caught and reflected the sunlight. But beauty didn't make it any less deadly. The attack began with a flash of light that turned the morning sky white. The colony's main power station disappeared in an explosion that shook the ground for miles around. More flashes followed as the alien ship systematically destroyed the colony's defenses. Jake grabbed his communicator and ran toward the door. "Lisa, Tony, get to the shelters? I'm going to try to buy us some time." "Jake, don't be stupid," Lisa called after him. "You can't fight those ships alone." But Jake was already gone, running through the chaos toward the communication array. If he could keep the transmitter working for just a few more minutes, maybe someone would hear their call for help. Maybe someone would come. The alien ships continued their attack, methodical and efficient. One by one, the colony's buildings were destroyed. The crystalline vessels moved like dancers in the sky, beautiful and terrible as they brought death. From above, Jake reached the communication tower just as another explosion rocked the colony. The tower was damaged but still functional. He activated the emergency beacon and set it to repeat his message automatically. "This is Kepler Colony 7. We are under attack. Please help us." The message began broadcasting into space, traveling at the speed of light toward distant worlds. Jake didn't know if anyone would hear it, or if anyone would care enough to respond. But it was the only hope they had. As the communication tower exploded around him, Jake Morrison's last thought was of home. 6 months had passed since the distress signal left Kepler 442b. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching monitoring stations across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Most civilizations that received it simply filed it away as another minor incident in the outer territories on the planet Ethereal Prime. Ambassador Zethkri of the ancient Ethereal Collective reviewed the transmission with mild interest. The tall, pale alien creature had lived for over 3 centuries and had seen countless conflicts rise and fall. To him, the destruction of a single human colony was barely worth noting. "The humans are still young," he told his aide. They expand too quickly without proper protection. This is a lesson they must learn on their own. The Tradari Union, focused on profit and commerce, had a similar reaction. Trade Minister Klexmar looked at the coordinates and shook his four-armed body in dismissal. That system has no valuable trade routes. Let the Zephyrians have it. It means nothing to us. The Galactic Council, dominated by these older civilizations, decided not to act. Humanity was too new, too primitive to waste resources on. The Zephyrian Empire was powerful and dangerous. It was better to let sleeping giants lie, but the signal also reached Earth. Admiral Ben Cooper sat in his office at the Human Colonial Defense Force headquarters, reading the decoded message for the third time. The words were simple and direct, but they carried the weight of nearly 3,000 lives. His weathered face showed the strain of years spent protecting humanity's expansion into the galaxy. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked his aide, Lieutenant Commander Paul Davis. 6 months, sir." The signal traveled through 17 different relay stations before reaching us. Admiral Cooper closed his eyes. 6 months. By now, everyone on Kepler 442b was probably dead. The Zephyrians were known for their ruthless efficiency when dealing with what they considered inferior species. They would have strip-mined the planet and eliminated any witnesses. "What's the fastest ship we can get to that system?" Cooper asked. "The heavy cruiser Valiant could make the trip in 4 months, sir. But that's assuming the Zephyrians don't detect them coming." Cooper stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the orbital shipyards where humanity's fleet was being built. Most of the ships were explorers and colony vessels, designed for peaceful expansion. But tucked away in the most secure section of the yards was something different. "What about the Retribution?" Cooper asked quietly. Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the Retribution is still in testing phase. The crew hasn't completed all their training exercises. But it's functional?" "Yes, sir. All systems are operational." "Captain Hayes has been pushing for a real mission to test the ship's capabilities." Cooper nodded slowly. The UCS Retribution was humanity's first true warship, built in secret over the past 5 years. Unlike the exploration vessels that other species associated with humans, the Retribution was designed for one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never be defenseless again. The ship incorporated every lesson learned from humanity's previous encounters with hostile aliens. It was faster than anything else in human space, more heavily armed than ships 3 times its size, and equipped with technology that would surprise even the most advanced civilizations. "Get me Captain Hayes," Cooper ordered. Captain Rick Hayes arrived within the hour. He was a tall man with short brown hair and intense green eyes. At 42, he was young for a ship captain, but he had earned his position through skill and determination. He had served in the Outer Colony Wars and understood the reality of space combat. "Admiral, you wanted to see me?" Hayes asked as he entered the office. "Rick, I have a mission for you. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be safe." Hayes straightened. "What do you need, sir?" Cooper handed him the decoded message from Kepler 442b. Hayes read it carefully, his expression growing darker. "With each word, the Zephyrians," Hayes said when he finished. "How long ago?" 6 months. They're probably all dead by now." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "What are my orders, sir?" "Take the Retribution to Kepler 442b. Assess the situation. If there are survivors, rescue them. If not—" Cooper paused. "Make sure the galaxy knows that attacking human colonies has consequences?" Hayes nodded. "I'll need my senior staff briefed immediately." "Already arranged." "They're waiting in conference room." The conference room was secure, its walls lined with materials that blocked all forms of electronic surveillance. Captain Hayes entered to find his 3 most trusted officers waiting for him. Commander Amy Rodriguez was his tactical officer, a sharp-minded woman who had graduated at the top of her class from the Naval Academy. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes showed the focus of someone who lived for combat analysis. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh was the chief engineer, a quiet man who understood the retribution systems better than anyone else. His blond hair was starting to gray at the temples, and his hands showed the calluses of someone who had spent years working with machinery. Major Kate Sullivan commanded the ship's marine contingent. She was a compact woman with short red hair and scars on her arms from the colony wars. Her soldiers respected her because she had fought beside them and bled with them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hayes began, "we have our first real mission." He told them about the distress signal and the situation at Kepler 442b. The room was silent as he spoke, each officer absorbing the implications. "The Zephyrians have never fought humans before," Rodriguez said when he finished. "They don't know our capabilities." "That works in our favor," Walsh added. "The retribution systems are based on principles they've never seen." Sullivan leaned forward. "What about the colonists? If any are still alive, extracting them from a hostile planet won't be easy." "We'll deal with that when we get there," Hayes replied. "Right now, our priority is reaching the system without being detected." The meeting continued for 2 hours as they planned their approach. The retribution would travel through less monitored space routes, avoiding the major trade lanes where other ships might detect them. They would arrive at Kepler 442b in 3 weeks, faster than any conventional rescue mission. As the meeting ended, Hayes pulled Rodriguez aside. "Amy, I want you to run combat simulations against Zephyrian ships. Use everything we know about their tactics and technology." "Already started, sir. The preliminary results are interesting." "How so?" "They fight like most galactic civilizations. Honor-based combat, formal battle lines, weapon exchanges at long range. Very civilized." Hayes smiled grimly. "And we don't?" "No, sir. We fight to win, not to prove a point." 3 days later, the Retribution departed Earth orbit. The ship moved through space with a grace that belied its massive size. Its hull was black as midnight, designed to absorb sensor scans and blend with the darkness of space. In the ship's command center, Hayes watched the stars wheel past as they entered hyperspace. The faster-than-light journey would take them far from human space, into a region where humanity was still considered a minor species. "All systems are green," Walsh reported from his engineering station. "The new engines are performing better than expected." "Excellent. Amy, what's our ETA?" 22 days, 14 hours to the Kepler system," Rodriguez replied. "We should arrive well before any conventional rescue fleet." Hayes nodded. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were humanity's best and brightest, trained for a mission that no one hoped they would ever have to carry out. But now that the time had come, they were ready. "Captain," Sullivan said from her station, "my Marines are requesting permission to review the colony layouts. They want to be prepared for a ground operation." "Granted. Tell them to prepare for the worst." As the Retribution traveled through hyperspace, news of the Kepler 442b attack spread through certain channels. The Zephyrian Empire made no secret of their victory, seeing it as a warning to other species about the consequences of expansion without proper protection. War Commander Vextar, the Zephyrian officer who had led the attack, was promoted for his efficient handling of the human pest problem. He established a garrison on the planet and began the systematic extraction of its resources. The surviving colonists, fewer than 2,000 now, were forced to work in the mines under harsh conditions. Jake Morrison, scarred but alive, had become their unofficial leader. He kept their spirits up with stories of Earth and promises that someone would come for them, but as the months passed, hope began to fade. The galaxy was vast and they were just one small colony. Who would risk war with the Zephyrian Empire for a few thousand humans? Jake didn't know that his distress signal had reached the right people. He didn't know that the most advanced warship humanity had ever built was racing toward them through the darkness of space. He couldn't know that the response to his call for help would shock the entire galaxy. The Retribution continued its journey, carrying with it the hopes of the colonists and the determination of its crew. In 3 weeks, the Zephyrian Empire would learn that humanity was not as helpless as they had believed. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans decided to stop playing by everyone else's rules. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system like a ghost returning from the dead. The massive ship's black hull absorbed the light from the distant star, making it nearly invisible against the darkness of space. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the sensor displays as they painted a picture of what had happened to the human colony. "Tactical report," Hayes ordered quietly. Commander Rodriguez worked at her station, her fingers dancing across. "The controls. I'm reading 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and 1 command dreadnought. All Zephyrian design. They've established a standard occupation pattern around the planet." Hayes studied the display showing the enemy fleet. Each ship was beautiful in its own way, with crystal formations that caught and reflected starlight. But he knew that beneath that beauty lay enough firepower to level a continent. "They're not expecting trouble," Rodriguez continued. "Their formation is defensive but relaxed. Most of their ships are powered down to minimal levels." "They think they've won," Walsh said from his engineering station. "No one's coming to rescue a few thousand humans," Hayes nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had every reason to be confident. They had destroyed the colony's defenses 6 months ago, and no human rescue fleet had appeared. To them, the matter was settled. What about the planet? Hayes asked. Rodriguez switched her sensors to focus on Kepler 442b. "I'm detecting massive mining operations. They've built extraction facilities across the northern continent. There are also what appear to be prison camps." "Prison camps?" "Yes, sir. Thermal imaging shows large groups of humans being held in contained areas. They appear to be using the colonists as forced labor." Hayes felt his jaw tighten. The Zephyrians weren't just strip mining the planet. They were making the humans help them do it. How many survivors? "Approximately 2,000 life signs. They're scattered across several camps, but the largest concentration is near the main mining facility." Sullivan leaned forward from her station. "Captain, I need to get eyes on the ground. We need to know the exact layout of those camps and the enemy's defensive positions." Hayes considered this. A reconnaissance mission would be risky, but they needed detailed information before they could plan a rescue operation. "How long would you need?" "Give me 12 hours. I'll take a small team down in stealth pods. We can gather intelligence and identify the best extraction points." "Do it, but be careful, Kate. We can't help the colonists if we're detected too early." As Sullivan left to prepare her team, Hayes turned his attention back to the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was formidable, but it was also predictable. They had arranged their ships in a classic defensive formation, with the heavy cruisers forming an outer ring and the destroyers providing inner protection for the command ship. "Amy, run a full tactical analysis. I want to know every weakness." "In their formation? Already working on it, sir." The Zephyrians fight according to established galactic conventions. They position their ships for maximum firepower exchange at long range. "And we don't fight by galactic conventions." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "No, sir, we fight to win." The next 12 hours passed slowly. The Retribution maintained its position at the edge of the system, hidden by its advanced stealth technology. The ship's sensors recorded every movement of the Zephyrian fleet, building a detailed picture of their patrol patterns and defensive procedures. Sullivan's reconnaissance team launched in 3 stealth pods, small craft designed to be invisible to most sensor systems. They slipped past the Zephyrian patrols and landed on the planet's surface under cover of darkness. On the bridge, Hayes waited for their first report. The stakes were enormous. If the reconnaissance team was discovered, the Zephyrians would know that humans were coming. The element of surprise would be lost, and with it, any chance of rescuing the colonists. "Captain," Walsh said from his station, "I'm receiving a transmission from Major Sullivan. It's heavily encrypted. Put it through." Sullivan's voice crackled through the speakers, distorted by the encryption but clearly recognizable. "Phoenix Base, this is Raven Team. We have eyes on the primary facility. Report, Raven Team. The situation is worse than we thought. The Zephyrians have the colonists working in shifts around the clock. Conditions are harsh. I can see signs of malnutrition and exhaustion among the prisoners." Hayes closed his eyes. These were civilians, people who had come to Kepler 442b to build a new life. They had never asked to be part of a war. What about security? He asked. Overconfident and sloppy. They have guards, but they're not expecting trouble. Most of their defensive positions are designed to prevent escapes, not to repel an attack. Can you identify the colony leadership? Affirmative. Jake Morrison is still alive. He's in the largest camp, near the main mining facility. The Zephyrians seem to be using him to keep the other prisoners in line. Hayes felt a surge of hope. If Morrison was alive, he could help coordinate the rescue from the inside. What's your assessment for extraction? Difficult but possible. The camps are spread out, which works in our favor. If we can create enough chaos, we might be able to get the colonists to designated pickup points. Understood. Continue your reconnaissance and report back in 6 hours. As the connection ended, Hayes turned to Rodriguez. Amy, I need options. How do we take out that fleet without getting the colonists killed? Rodriguez had been working on this problem since they arrived. The Zephyrians have their ships positioned to protect against a conventional attack. But we're not conventional. She brought up a 3-dimensional display of the enemy formation. Their ships are arranged in defensive layers. If we attack from outside, we'll have to fight through each layer while they coordinate their response. So, we don't attack from outside. Exactly. We use our stealth systems to get inside their formation. By the time they realize we're there, we'll be in position to strike at multiple targets simultaneously. Hayes studied the display. It was a dangerous plan, requiring precise timing and perfect execution. But it was also the kind of unconventional thinking that might give them the edge they needed. What about the orbital defenses? They've built several weapons platforms around the planet. Standard Zephyrian design, powerful but predictable. We can neutralize them quickly if we strike without warning. Walsh joined the conversation. Captain, I've been analyzing their ship designs. They rely heavily on energy shields and directed. Energy weapons, very sophisticated, but they have weaknesses. What kind of weaknesses? Their shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb impacts from conventional projectiles. But they've never faced kinetic weapons accelerated to the velocities our railguns can achieve. Hayes smiled. Human military doctrine had always emphasized kinetic weapons, partly because they were reliable and partly because they didn't require exotic materials to build. Other species had moved toward more sophisticated energy weapons, but humans had perfected the art of throwing very heavy objects very fast. How fast can we accelerate a railgun projectile? With our new magnetic field generators, we can push a tungsten rod to about 15% of light speed. The impact energy would be enormous. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Their shields won't know what hit them, and the projectiles will be moving too fast for their point defense systems to track. Hayes felt the pieces of a plan coming together. What about the ground forces? That's where it gets interesting, Rodriguez said. The Zephyrians have about 5,000 troops on the planet, but they're spread out across the mining operations. They're not expecting a fight. Our Marines can handle ground troops, Sullivan's voice said from the communicator. She had been listening to the conversation. Give me covering fire from orbit and I can punch through their defenses. Hayes made his decision. Here's what we're going to do. We'll use our stealth systems to position ourselves inside their fleet formation. At exactly 0300 local time, we'll begin simultaneous attacks on their orbital defenses and their ships. He turned to Walsh. Steve, I want maximum power to the railguns. Target their command ship first, then work your way out through their formation. Understood. Sir, Amy, coordinate with Kate's team on the ground. The moment we start our attack, her Marines need to begin liberating the camps. Already planning the timing, sir. Hayes looked around the bridge at his crew. These were the people who would determine whether the mission succeeded or failed. They were about to attempt something that would either save 2,000 lives or get them all killed. One more thing, he said. The Zephyrians think they're fighting primitive humans with outdated weapons. They have no idea what we're capable. That's our advantage and we're going to use it. The final preparations took another 6 hours. Sullivan's team identified the locations of all the prison camps and mapped the Zephyrian defensive positions. The Retribution's weapon systems were charged and ready. Every member of the crew knew their role in the plan. At 0200 local time, the Retribution began its approach. The ship moved through the Zephyrian fleet formation like a shadow, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to their sensors. The enemy ships continued their lazy patrol patterns, unaware that death was moving among them. Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as they closed the distance to their targets. In 1 hour, the Zephyrians would learn that. At exactly 0300 local time, the night sky above Kepler 442 be turned into hell. The first sign of the attack was a flash of light that made the darkness disappear for several seconds. One of the Zephyrian orbital defense platforms simply vanished, torn apart by a tungsten rod moving at 15% of light speed. The explosion was so bright that colonists in the prison camps could see it clearly from the planet's surface. War. Commander Vextar was asleep in his quarters aboard the command ship when the attack began. The first explosion woke him, and he stumbled to his feet as alarms began screaming throughout the ship. His purple skin turned pale as he realized what was happening. "Report!" he shouted into his communicator. "Sir, we're under attack. Defense. Platform 7 has been destroyed. We're detecting massive energy signatures, but our sensors can't locate the source." Vextar ran to the bridge of his ship, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. When he arrived, he found his crew in chaos. The tactical displays showed impossible readings. Ships were exploding all around them, but their sensors showed nothing. "How many ships are attacking us?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir. Our sensors are showing energy signatures from multiple directions, but we can't get a clear reading on any enemy vessels." Another flash lit up space as a second defense. Platform died. Then a third. The Zephyrian fleet was being torn apart by an enemy they couldn't see. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Hayes watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The ship's advanced stealth systems were working perfectly. They were invisible to Zephyrian sensors, moving through the enemy fleet like a ghost ship. "Target the heavy cruiser on our starboard side," Hayes ordered. "Target acquired," Rodriguez replied. "Railgun charged and ready." "Fire," the Retribution's main railgun fired with a sound like thunder. The tungsten projectile accelerated through the ship's magnetic field system, reaching incredible speed in milliseconds. It struck the Zephyrian cruiser amidships, passing completely through the vessel before the alien ship even knew it was under attack. The cruiser broke apart in a shower of crystal fragments and burning gas. Its crew had no time to send a distress signal or even understand what had killed them. "Next target," Hayes said calmly. The systematic destruction of the Zephyrian fleet continued. The Retribution moved through their formation like a predator, among sheep, striking without warning and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The alien ships were built for conventional warfare, with energy shields designed to stop other energy weapons. They had no defense against kinetic projectiles. Moving at impossible speeds. War Commander Vextar watched in horror as his fleet died around him. Ships that had served the Zephyrian Empire for decades were being destroyed in minutes. The attackers showed no mercy, no honor, no respect for the conventions of galactic warfare. "Sir, we're detecting the enemy vessel," his tactical officer reported. "It's moving through our formation, but it keeps disappearing from our sensors." "How many ships?" "Just one, sir. A single vessel is destroying our entire fleet." Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. One ship against 50. It was impossible. But the evidence was right in front of him as another cruiser exploded in a ball of flame. "All ships, concentrate fire on Grid 77 Alpha," he ordered. "If we can't see it, we'll destroy everything in that area." The remaining Zephyrian ships turned their weapons toward the coordinates where their sensors had last detected the enemy. Beams of energy lit up space as they fired everything they had at empty darkness. The Retribution wasn't there anymore. It had moved to a new position, continuing its deadly dance through the enemy formation. Hayes watched as the Zephyrian ships wasted their ammunition on empty space. "They're firing blind," Rodriguez observed. "They have no idea where we are." "Let's give them something to shoot at," Hayes said. "Drop stealth for 10 seconds, then jump to position Delta 4. The Retribution suddenly appeared on Zephyrian sensors, a massive black shape that seemed to absorb light. For a moment, the enemy fleet had a clear target. Every ship in the formation turned their weapons toward the human vessel. Then the Retribution vanished again, disappearing just as quickly as it had appeared. The Zephyrian energy beams struck empty space where the ship had been seconds before. "Now they know we're here," Hayes said. "Time to finish this." The final phase of the attack was swift and brutal. The Retribution targeted the command ship, War Commander Vexstar-S flagship. The railgun fired 3 times in quick succession, each projectile striking a different section of the massive vessel. Vexstar felt his ship shudder as the first projectile tore through the hull. The second impact destroyed the main engines. The third punched through the bridge, killing half his crew instantly. "Abandon ship," he ordered, but it was too late. The command ship was breaking apart, its crystal structure fracturing like glass. On the planet's surface, Major Sullivan and her Marines had begun their own attack. The moment the first orbital platform exploded, they struck at the prison camps. The Zephyrian guards, distracted by the battle in space, were caught completely off guard. Jake Morrison was lying on his bunk when the explosions began. The barracks around him shook with each blast, and through the small window, he could see flashes of light in the sky. At first, he thought the Zephyrians were conducting some kind of military exercise. Then he heard human voices shouting in English. "This is the Colonial Marines? All colonists move to the designated rally points. We're here to get you out." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. For 6 months, he had told the other prisoners that someone would come for them. Most had stopped believing him weeks ago. But now, impossibly, rescue had arrived. He ran outside and saw armed figures in black combat armor moving through the camp. They were human, carrying weapons he didn't recognize. The Zephyrian guards were either dead or running for their lives. "You Jake Morrison?" one of the Marines asked, double quotes. "Yes, who are you?" "Major Kate Sullivan, Colonial Marines. We got your message. Sorry we're late." Jake felt tears running down his face. "How many ships did you bring?" "Just one, but it's enough." As if to prove her point, another explosion lit up the sky. The Zephyrian fleet was dying, torn apart by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Sullivan activated her communicator. "Phoenix Base, this is Raven Team. We have secured the primary camp. Beginning evacuation procedures." "Understood, Raven Team. Transport ships are on their way down." Jake looked up at the sky where the battle was raging. "What kind of ship do you have up there?" Sullivan smiled grimly. "The kind that doesn't leave people behind." The evacuation took 3 hours. Small transport ships from the Retribution landed at each prison camp, loading the surviving colonists as quickly as possible. Many of the prisoners were sick and weak from months of forced labor, but they were alive. In space. The battle was over. The Zephyrian fleet had been completely destroyed. 50 ships reduced to floating debris and scattered crystals. The only survivors were a few escape pods that had managed to launch before their ships were destroyed. War Commander Vexstar floated in one of those pods, staring out at the wreckage of his fleet. His communications system was damaged, but he managed to send one final message to the Zephyrian High Command. "The humans, they don't fight like us. They don't follow the rules. They show no mercy, no honor. They are not warriors. They are something else, something terrible." The message was weak and broken, but it reached its destination. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire received word that their entire occupation fleet had been destroyed by a single human vessel on the bridge of the Retribution. Hayes watched the last of the transport ships return from the planet. The colonists were safe, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would learn what had happened here, and everything would change. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "we're receiving a transmission from one of the Zephyrian escape pods. Put it through." War Commander Vexstar-S voice came through the speakers. Weak but filled with fear. Human vessel, I am War Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Empire. I demand to know why you attacked without warning. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Hayes activated the communication system. This is Captain Rick Hayes of the UCS Retribution? You attacked a peaceful colony and enslaved its people. What did you expect would happen? We followed standard conquest protocols. The colony was undefended. It was a legitimate military target, and this is a legitimate military response. You wanted to see how humans fight a war, now you know. Hayes cut the transmission. He had no interest in discussing the rules of warfare with someone who had spent 6 months terrorizing civilians. Set course for Earth, he ordered. It's time to go home. As the Retribution prepared to leave the system, Hayes looked at the tactical display one final time. The space around Kepler 442b was filled with debris from the destroyed Zephyrian fleet. It would serve as a monument to what happened when someone threatened human colonies. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had rules of its own, and they were written in the language of overwhelming force. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every major civilization had heard about the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet at Kepler 442b, the complete annihilation of 50 warships by a single human vessel sent shockwaves through governments and military commands from one end of known space to the other. On Ethereal Prime, Ambassador Zethkri stood before the Council of Elders, his pale features showing concern for the first time in decades. The ancient chamber was filled with beings who had lived for centuries, who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but none of them had ever heard of anything like this. The tactical data is clear, Zethkri reported to his fellow council members. The humans destroyed the entire Zephyrian occupation force without suffering a single casualty. They used weapons and tactics that we have never seen before. Elder Morthek, oldest of the Ethereal Collective, leaned forward. On his crystalline throne, how is this possible? The Zephyrians are a warrior race. Their ships are among the most advanced in the galaxy. That is what we believed, Zethkri replied. But the humans did not fight as we fight. They did not announce their presence. They did not issue challenges or demands for surrender. They simply appeared and began destroying everything in their path. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For thousands of years, warfare among the galactic civilizations had followed certain rules. Battles were formal affairs with clear objectives and understood limitations. What the humans had done was something else entirely. They fight like animals, Elder Vextel said with disgust. No honor, no respect for the conventions of civilized warfare. Perhaps, Zethkri said quietly, but they are effective animals. And now the galaxy knows that they are not the helpless newcomers we thought they were. Similar conversations were taking place on worlds across the galaxy. The Tridari Union called emergency sessions to discuss the economic implications. If humans could deploy such devastating military force, what did that mean for trade routes? And commercial agreements? Trade Minister Klexmar paced nervously around his office, his forearms gesturing wildly as he spoke to his advisors. We need to reconsider all our contracts with human colonies. If they can destroy a Zephyrian fleet, they can certainly disrupt our shipping lanes. Sir, his aide said carefully, perhaps we should approach them about forming a trade partnership. If they're this powerful, it might be better to have them as allies than enemies. The Zephyrian Empire was in chaos. The High Command had lost an entire fleet, along with one of their most experienced commanders. War Commander Vexstar had been rescued from his escape pod, but his report of the battle was almost unbelievable. They appeared from nowhere, he told the assembled military leaders. One moment our sensors showed empty space, the next moment our ships were exploding. They moved through our formation like ghosts, striking without warning. Supreme Commander Korthval, leader of the Zephyrian military, studied the tactical data with growing concern. You're telling me that a single human ship destroyed 50 of our vessels? Not destroyed, Vexstar corrected. Obliterated. Their weapons tore through our ships like they were made of paper, and they showed no mercy. They killed every crew member, destroyed every escape pod they could find. Except yours. Vexstar nodded grimly. I think they let me live so I could bring this message back. They wanted us to know what they're capable of. The implications terrified the Zephyrian leadership. For generations, they had expanded their empire through superior technology and military might. Now they faced an enemy that seemed to have both, along with a willingness to use them without restraint. On Earth, the return of the Retribution was treated as a quiet triumph. The rescued colonists were taken to medical facilities for treatment, while the crew of the warship was debriefed by military intelligence. The operation had been a complete success, but Admiral Cooper knew that the real consequences were just beginning. The galaxy will never look at us the same way again, he told Captain Hayes during their private meeting. We've shown them that we're not the peaceful explorers they thought we were, Hayes nodded. Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before attacking our colonies. Or maybe they'll decide we're too dangerous to let live. The possibility had occurred. To Hayes as well. By demonstrating humanity's military capabilities, they had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Some civilizations might choose to ally with humanity out of fear or respect. Others might decide that humans were a threat that needed to be eliminated. What are your orders, sir? Hayes asked. We're accelerating the fleet construction program. If other species decide to test us, we need to be ready. The Retribution won't be alone much longer. Jake Morrison stood in the hospital on Earth, looking out at the blue sky he had never expected to see again. His body was still recovering from months of forced labor, but his spirit was stronger than ever. The rescue had proven that humanity would not abandon its people. No matter how far away they were or how dangerous the mission, Lisa Parker visited him daily, bringing news from the other rescued colonists. Most were recovering well, though some would bear the scars of their experience for the rest of their lives. The important thing was that they were alive and free. Any word on rebuilding the colony? She asked during one of her visits. Jake shook his head. Admiral Cooper says the planet is too exposed. The Zephyrians might try to retake it, and we don't have the resources to defend it properly. So we just abandon it? For now. But someday we'll go back. And when we do, we'll make sure no one can take it from us again. The changes began slowly, then accelerated. Human colonies throughout the galaxy reported increased respect from their alien neighbors. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years suddenly moved forward. Diplomatic communications that had been ignored were answered promptly, but there were also signs of growing tension. Several civilizations began increasing their military spending, clearly preparing for the possibility of conflict with humanity. The Zephyrian Empire pulled back from their more aggressive expansion policies, but they also began building larger and more powerful warships. The galactic balance of power was shifting, and humanity was at the center of it all. 6 months after the Kepler 442b incident, Ambassador Zethkri requested a meeting with Admiral Cooper. The Ethereal Collective wanted to discuss the new reality of galactic politics. They met in a neutral space station. Far from either Earth or Ethereal Prime, the ancient alien studied the human admiral with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Your species has changed everything, Zethkri said without preamble. The old rules no longer apply. We never agreed to your old rules, Cooper replied. We came to the galaxy in peace, but we won't be victims. Yes, I understand that now. But you must understand the consequences of your actions. Fear is a powerful force. It can drive species to do terrible things. Cooper leaned back in his chair. Are you threatening us? I am warning you. The galaxy is full of old civilizations with old fears. Some of them will see humanity as a threat. That must be eliminated before it grows stronger. Let them try. They'll learn the same lesson the Zephyrians did. Zethkri was quiet for a long moment. You fight wars not to win territory or prove superiority. You fight them to ensure you never have to fight them again. That's right. This is both admirable and terrifying. Most species fight for glory. or resources. You fight for survival. That makes you infinitely more dangerous. Cooper stood up, the meeting clearly over. Then they should leave us alone. As the ambassador watched the human admiral leave, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. The galaxy had spent thousands of years developing rules for warfare, codes of conduct that limited destruction and preserved civilizations. Humanity followed none of these rules. They were survivors, and they would do whatever it took to ensure their survival. The galaxy would have to learn to live with that reality, or face the consequences. The distress signal from Kepler 442b had been answered, but what arrived had changed everything. The galaxy now knew that humanity was not just another species, seeking its place among the stars. They were something new, something that played by different rules. Admiral Cooper's words to Ambassador Zethkri became the unofficial motto of human expansion. We didn't come to the stars to be victims. We came to be survivors. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. From the ruins of the Zephyrian fleet to the halls of the Galactic Council, one truth was now clear: humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay. The colonists of Kepler 442b had been rescued, but their salvation had come at a price. The galaxy now knew what happened when humans decided to stop playing by everyone else's rules. It was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come.